on September 8th, 2025. Secretary, please call the roll.
Clausen,
Present.
Johns,
Present.
Johnson,
Present.
Munoz,
Present.
Simonian,
Present.
Sorum.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming today. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we gather today on the ancestral homelands of the Nisenan people. Sacramento is a gathering place for many local tribes who have lived throughout the Central Valley and the foothills for generations and were the original stewards of this land. We'd like to acknowledge the Southern Maidu people to the north, the Valley and Plains Miwok peoples to the south of the American River, and the Patwin Wintun people to the west of the Sacramento River. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude for our indigenous neighbors and for their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. There will now be a safety briefing for our in-person attendees.
Excuse me. Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Whistler from the Business Services Unit, and we're just going to go over some basic safety information before the meeting gets started.
Sorry, a little louder.
Oh, sorry about that. If there's emergency while we're here, please somebody call 911, give them as much information as possible. Also make sure that somebody is alerting the front desk that emergency has happened. If you feel shaking or an earthquake alert while you're here, protect yourself from falling objects. If possible, drop where you are, cover your head, neck, and shelter, or seek an interior wall and hold on until the shaking stops. If we're evacuated, proceed out the back of the auditorium using the doors on the right of either side. You can evacuate the building. The meeting location is Franklin D. Roosevelt Park on the southeast corner of 9th and P Street. It's about a block this way. Just follow the crowd, they'll all be going there. Look for the person holding the OEIS sign and check in with them so we can account for everybody. And we will return to the auditorium and resume the meeting when the emergency is all clear. There's also an AED located by this exit here if there's an emergency that requires it. And that is it.
Back to you. The meeting will proceed in the same manner as previous meetings, which will include public participation in person and remotely. We ask everyone to please be aware of crosstalk by ceding the floor as necessary to one another and each taking a turn to comment. We will now review public participation and the public comment procedure. For those of you attending in person who wish to provide public comment, you will be prompted to approach the podium in the front of the auditorium. Please provide your name and organization before you comment. For those of you joining us remotely, you can either queue to speak by using the raise hand button if you're on the webinar, or dialing *5 if you have dialed in. When your name is called, unmute yourself using the microphone button if you're on the webinar, or by dialing *6 if you're dialed in. Please provide your name and organization before you comment. Okay, following those instructions, we will now proceed to public comments on topics within the board's jurisdiction that are not on today's agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please approach the podium. Please provide your name and organization before you comment. Okay, seeing those. Okay, so for those on the webinar, use the raise hand button if you are on the webinar, dial *5 if you've dialed in. When your name is called, unmute yourself using the microphone button and dialing *6 if you've dialed in. So do we have any webinar comments?
We do have a raised hand from Megan Murphy.
Okay, please proceed. I didn't hear who it was.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
You did say somebody was on.
Megan, can you go ahead and try speaking again?
Yes, can you hear me?
We hear you now.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to make public comments on items not on the agenda. I'm Megan Murphy, the Senior Regulatory Advocate with the California Municipal Utilities Association, or CMUA. CMUA represents 85 publicly owned electric, gas, water, and wastewater utilities statewide. And together, CMUA members provide water service to 75% of Californians. CMUA submitted comments on the draft regulatory language for geographic information systems. And I just want to note to the board that we believe that requiring 100 millimeters accuracy for GPS coordinates on as-built presents serious implementation challenges, and that we request that there not be a mandated level of accuracy that's more stringent than what is required in Government Code Section 4216.3. We also plan on submitting comments on the draft standard safety practices for potholing. So we request that the board take the time to read those public comment letters we submitted, and please reach out if there are any further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the web?
There are no further comments.
Okay. Seeing no further comments, we will now move on to the presentation portion of this meeting. Ms. Reza, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Johns and members of the board. My name is Jessica, and I will be your MC for the next 2 days. I am the Chief of Education and Outreach for the board, and I want to welcome everyone that is participating in this year's event to share their perspectives and to learn about best practices and emerging technology for subsurface installation safety. As Chair Johns mentioned, there will be time for discussion and questions through public comment following each presentation. This afternoon, we'll hear a few presentations before taking a break to network and visit the exhibitor tables. When we resume, we will close out our day with additional presentations and closing remarks from the board. I would like to note before we begin that the presentations, ideas, and products shared during this event are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent the official policies or positions of the Underground Safety Board or the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety. No endorsement or recommendation of any product, service, or viewpoint is implied. The board and the office make no representations or warranties as to the accuracy, completeness, or adequacy of the information provided. This material does not constitute legal advice. Participants should consult their own legal and compliance teams for guidance. And with that, I would now like to welcome the board's acting executive officer, Brittny Branaman, who will be giving our opening remarks.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the California Underground Safety Board's Education and Outreach meeting. It is wonderful to see so many people in the room and online. As I look out, I can see that the room is filled with excavators, operators, policymakers, industry innovators, and community members. Each of you play a vital role in protecting California's underground infrastructure and making sure the people working around it go home safe every day. Your presence here today demonstrates a shared commitment to safety that goes beyond compliance. It shows a commitment to building a culture of care and responsibility for our state. My name is Brittny Branaman, and I serve as the acting executive officer for the Underground Safety Board. I have been with the board since the beginning, and I have had the privilege of working with many of you here today. Together, we have worked on regulations that have shaped the industry. We've allowed the use of power tools in the tolerance zone. We've required operators to keep contact information current with the regional notification centers. We've created a year-long ticket for ag excavators. And we launched the No 811 pilot. These accomplishments weren't mine alone. They were the result of a collective effort, problem solving, and perseverance, as they remind us of a deeper truth. Accidents are not random, meaningless events. They are evidence that a particular risk was not managed well enough. And behind that mismanagement of risk, there is always a person. Someone who didn't have the right tools, training, or information or support. And that is why the work that we do here together matters so much. This year's theme, sharing what works and shaping what next, is exactly why we are here. It is about recognizing the practices, innovations, and partnerships that have prevented damages and saved lives. And it is also about challenging ourselves to embrace new tools, new approaches, and new ways of thinking. Because as the saying goes, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And the time for change is now. Every day in California, excavation crews break grounds on projects that power our economy and improve our communities. They lay fiber optic cables that connect our digital world. They repair water mains that deliver clean water. They maintain pipelines that keep energy flowing to our homes and businesses. But beneath that surface lies a complex and fragile network of utilities: gas lines, electrical cables, telecommunication systems, water pipelines. A single mistake can result in injuries, fatalities, costly damages, or service disruptions that ripple far beyond the job site. Each year, we still see incidences that could have been prevented. Too often, they happen because of a missed 811 call, a delay in marking, or a misunderstanding in the field. These are not just technical failures. They are system failures that put lives at risk. This is why the Underground Safety Board exists. Since 2016, when the Dig Safe Act created this board, our mission has been clear: investigate accidents, develop standards, and lead education and outreach programs across the state. This meeting is not about board business. It's about you. It's about creating a space where excavators and operators, regulators, policymakers, innovators come together so we can all learn from one another. Over the next 2 days, you will hear about the real-world cost of getting dig ticket management wrong. You will hear updates from Dig Alert and USA North, best practices in damage prevention from Kinder Morgan, the outcome of our statewide education and outreach workshops, emerging technologies like GIS mapping and 3D visualization, investigations that show where the breakdowns are happening, and innovation like smudged geofencing technology to enhance pipeline safety. This agenda was built with you in mind. It is designed to provide practical knowledge and inspire you to think differently about underground safety. I want to take a moment and speak directly to our operators and excavators, the people on the front lines of this work. You are the heart of excavation safety. When excavators call 811 before digging, when operators provide accurate and timely information, when locators take extra care to ensure precision, accidents are prevented, communities are protected, and people go home safe. But here's the reality. Our systems are not perfect. We cannot afford to keep doing things the way they've always been done. Preventable accidents are still happening. And as the industry grows more complex, then the risks grow as well. That is why we must be willing to change, to adopt new tools, to commit to doing things differently. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. and I know that together we can change. The board is committed to building on our mission in bold ways, developing safety standards that reflect the latest technology and the best practices, expanding education and outreach programs so information reaches every corner of the state, strengthening our investigative processes so every damage will teach us something, deepening partnerships with industry and community organizations because collaboration is the key to lasting change. But none of this will succeed without your participation. Safety is not achieved by regulation alone. It is achieved by people. So as we begin this meeting, I encourage you to do 3 things. Number 1, engage fully. Take advantage of the networking opportunities, share your experiences, and listen to ideas that you can bring back to your team. I'd love to meet everyone in this room, so if you see me, please come up and introduce yourself. I'd love to hear from you and learn about your experiences. Number 2, challenge assumptions. If you hear something today that pushes you outside of your comfort zone, we ask that you create space for it. This is where innovation begins. And number 3, commit to action. Don't leave this meeting with a good idea that never makes it back to the field. Leave with a plan to do something differently. On behalf of the Underground Safety Board, thank you for your commitment, your partnership, and your presence here today. Together, we are not only sharing what works, we are shaping what's next. Thank you and welcome to the 2025 Education and Outreach Meeting.
Thank you to our acting executive officer for those inspirational opening remarks. In case you had not yet joined us in the room, my name is Jessica. I am the Chief of Education and Outreach with the California Underground Safety Board. And the next presentation is on introducing the California Underground Safety Board and improving excavation safety. Okay. So today I'm going to provide a brief introduction to the board and the distinctive approach we are taking to improve safety around underground infrastructure. And I'll also share some of the ways that you can get involved with the board's work. This will be a theme of the event, and many of the presentations will share this information. So if you miss it once, you'll hear it again. We'll get started with the history and the creation of the board. The board was established by California lawmakers in the Dig Safe Act of 2016, following a pair of deadly excavation accidents in 2015, one in Fresno and one in Bakersfield. Those tragedies had been preceded by the 2004 Walnut Creek accident, where 5 people were killed when petroleum from a Kinder Morgan pipeline ignited after being hit by an excavator, and the 2010 explosion in San Bruno that killed 8 people and destroyed 38 homes. Following the San Bruno incident, PG&E had begun issuing notices of unsafe excavation to some contractors in an effort to improve safety around their pipelines. But some associations didn't like PG&E's approach and didn't think that the utility recognized its own faults. They were looking for a fair approach to determining financial liability. This lack of trust between excavators and operators was front and center in the legislative discussion on dig-in safety. The board is made up of 9 members appointed by the governor and legislature to enforce the Dig Safe Act through accident investigations, excavation safety regulations and standards development, and the education and outreach program coordination. The board members achieve this balance by bringing knowledge and expertise from their experiences as excavators, operators, and locators. The investigation piece addresses the trust issue. Now there's an independent investigative body writing public reports so no one feels they are treated unfairly in damage claim settlements. The board staff includes 3 units: investigations, policy, and education and outreach. The responsibilities of the investigations unit include incident and complaint investigations, compliance audits, and field education. The responsibilities of the policy unit include safety standards and regulations and safety analysis. The responsibilities of the education and outreach unit include education and outreach direction and content, and education course delivery. Each year, the board releases an annual work plan that acts as a guide for the board's investigation, policy, and education and outreach activities and decisions throughout the year. The board's 2025 work plan includes these investigations initiatives: conducting electronic positive response enforcement audits and expanding the No 811 pilot program. I'll expand on each of these a bit, but we do have a presentation planned by our investigations team, which will go into more detail on these. To promote compliance with the electronic response requirement, advisory notices were sent to utility operators who have not been compliant with the requirement at least 50% of the time during the first half of 2023. Following those advisory letters and audit preparations made last year, the investigative team will carry out 1 or more compliance audits this year. The audits will encourage operator compliance with their obligations under the law. In the second half of 2023, the board began a No 811 pilot program designed to encourage excavator compliance with their obligations under the law for an 811 ticket. 2 operators are participating in this program and reporting damages, and we are looking to expand them to a minimum of 1 additional operator. Staff is also working to streamline the intake and processing of complaints of excavation without contacting 811. The board's work plan includes 5 policy initiatives. The potholing and planning and design committee's previous work will continue to inform standardization of the process for project designers to obtain the locations of subsurface installations during the planning and design phase of a project. The Ticket Process Committee will continue refining electronic positive response codes to improve and enhance communication between operators and excavators. Sample simulations of communications between operators and excavators were presented in late 2024, and the codes have also been reviewed with regional notification centers. An update on this initiative will be provided at the November board meeting. The board is working on the development of safety standards for potholing and unmarked lines. The draft standard safety practices for potholing addresses excavating around subsurface installations. These standard safety practices are not intended to replace other relevant standards, including the Common Ground Alliance best practices, but are there to inform areas currently without established standards. A public comment period is currently open for the proposed potholing standards, and comments will be accepted until tomorrow, Wednesday, September 9th that's Tuesday. So Tuesday, September 9th at 5 p.m. If you are here in person, there is a QR code that you can scan here on the side of the entry so that you can get some more information on that item. And the board welcomes input of excavators, operators, locators, construction firms, and other interested stakeholders. Based on feedback from stakeholders that there's a lack of standard communication practices between excavators and operators upon the discovery of an unmarked subsurface installation, the scope of unmarked line standards will focus on communication practices of operators who are notified about the presence of an unmarked line. A public workshop is scheduled for September 17th in Corona, and there's more information about that workshop available by the auditorium entrance for those who are here in person. A public comment period for draft GIS regulatory language to implement the GIS mapping law closed on September 3rd. The purpose of that comment period was to collect feedback from stakeholders before initiating a formal rulemaking process, including comments about accuracy of geospatial coordinates, component and attribute records, and geospatial coordinate metadata records. The board will consider these comments before proceeding with the rulemaking process. The board is in the process of producing regulations on how operators terminate memberships with regional notification centers and requirements for having accurate shapefiles on record. Proposed regulatory language will open for public comment later this year. You can participate in these initiatives by providing public feedback, attending workshops, and completing surveys. The board's 2025 work plan also includes these education and outreach initiatives. The board is continuing its commitment to support excavation safety by developing new educational toolkits that deliver essential information, best practices, and guidance on excavation safety issues with the goal to improve statutory compliance and enhance understanding among stakeholders. The board is improving accessibility to their education course by working to make the self-paced online course publicly available for operators and excavators who wish to proactively enhance their knowledge of safe excavation practices. The Education and Outreach Committee facilitated workshops that brought stakeholders together to collaborate on a strategic improvement plan to enhance statewide education and outreach effectiveness. 4 workshops were held this year, and I will be presenting the outcomes of those sessions tomorrow. The annual Education and Outreach meeting. Welcome. We are here over the next day and a half, sharing what works, shaping what's next for excavation safety. This event is an opportunity for stakeholders to have collaborative discussions with others in the industry. The recordings for the board's workshops and the board's meetings, including this meeting, can be viewed on the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety's YouTube channel. You can get involved with the board by visiting energysafety.ca.gov. On our website, excavators can report damages to subsurface utilities, tell us if they're having an issue with an operator failing to mark on time or provide EPR, and submit an idea to let us know your thoughts on how we should address public safety concerns. To submit an idea to the board, you can complete an online form or download the form to fill out and send in the mail. All upcoming meeting and event materials are also listed on the website along with the dates and locations. Our Education and Outreach Ambassador, Brittny Friedman, will be presenting an in-depth presentation on how to navigate the board's online resources tomorrow. And with that, we will open the floor to public comment. As a reminder, if you're in person, you can approach the podium. And if you're here on the webinar, you can follow the instructions on the screen. Are there any hands raised on the webinar?
There are no public comments.
All right. So seeing no public comments, we will proceed. So up next, we will hear our updates from the regional notification centers, Dig Alert and USA North. Ms. Diamond, you will be first.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board. I just have a few things. In keeping with the theme of sharing what works, I kind of went back in time to sharing what worked for Dig Alert in the past. We have done billboards. We have had Rose Parade floats. We have flown banners by planes over beaches in Southern California. And all of those have helped. Obviously, the billboards with the 800 number is before 811 was even considered. We've done bus shelters. We do ads in the some of our pro sports. This happens to be in the Lakers yearbook. We also, the thing that has worked the best, they don't require them anymore, I don't believe, were public service announcements. And I'm not exactly sure how to make this start. There we go.
Form of utility line. Hit a gas line and you might have an explosion. Cut a power line and you could be electrocuted. But as you're about to see, there is a solution, and it's free. It was supposed to be a simple project. Dig a hole and take out an annoying tree. But the workers underestimated how deep the gas line was that was next to the house, and suddenly a shovel hit it.
I was on the other side of the house, and the landscaper ran up my driveway shouting that they had cut the line. And coincidentally, at the same time is when I smelled all the gas. And I'm thinking, okay, my daughter's upstairs, the windows are closed, and our house is going to blow up any minute. And so we got out of there fast.
Julie then called the gas company who fixed the line, and now she has a bill for the repairs. But it could have been much worse.
We've had cases where we've had explosions due to a leaking gas line that then in turn results in a fire, and we don't like to see that.
The fact is, not only should you call Dig Alert, you have to call Dig Alert. It's the law. And if that's not enough, think of the danger. Now, when you're digging in your yard, this is the last vehicle that you want to have pulling up to your house. But it will happen if you don't make that call before you dig. Remember, if you're going to dig, you need to call Dig Alert at least 2 days in advance. It is the law.
The interesting thing about these, when these have appeared on news programs, is that our phone lines busied out. It wasn't because people were calling because they were starting to dig. They were calling because they had questions. Because that's basically what we're selling, is education about what you might do down the line and for you to remember. Shaping what's next. Even now, I don't need to contact Dig Alert if I'm planting a tree. That's not true. Whether you're removing a tree or planting a tree, even small projects, you can hit underground lines. We're doing some of that in social media. We just recently updated our Dig Alert logo with our in ice with the Anaheim Ducks. So that will be seen at all home games and on TV if it's televised. We do in-person events. I thought this was kind of a nice picture of all of our Dig Alert bags with everybody eating their breakfast. Again, we're doing more social media now. So that's some of the things that we're doing that's shaping what's next. That is all we have. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. James Wingate with USA North 811. Our marketing and education team will be giving a more thorough presentation tomorrow about things we've been doing. So today I will just give a brief update. I know you are all familiar with this, but since we have a lot of new faces today, normally I'll just inform this group that normally when the regional notification centers or the 2811 centers, USA North and Dig Alert provide our updates, we talk about statistics and other developments, but since today we're focused on education and outreach, I don't have statistics for you today other than to say that there are no anomalies. I know that was something that somebody asked for recently, was to let you know if we're seeing anomalies, and short answer is no, not right now. So we'll continue to monitor that and let you know if that happens. But for now, I just wanted to make you aware of a couple things that we have. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll get this one for you. One more. One more slide from Dig Alert, but that concerns everyone really is I think most of you, or hopefully everyone on this who's involved in damage prevention, has heard of CARGA, the California Regional Common Ground Alliance, which is an association of all stakeholders committed to damage prevention, whether that be utility operators, excavators, locators, the 811 centers, equipment manufacturers, insurance, all the parties that are involved. And the goal is if we can talk about our issues and solve them before it gets to the regulatory point. So that's the attempt with CARGA. CARGA's been around for 20 years? 20 years this year. It's a big deal. And we have an event coming up on September 11th, which is, October. Yes, that's coming up. Those are Dig Alert's webinars right there. I apologize. What I wanted to tell you about was the mock strike event in October, which is October 10th, and you can see that right here, assuming everyone in the room is looking forward. But October 10th, and that's going to be in Irvine, California. CARGA does 2 in-person events per year, meetings, and 2 virtual meetings. And then a few other miscellaneous events. This one is the mock strike, where it simulates what happens when there's a damage as far as all the resources that are involved, whether it's first responders coming and utility operators having to fix the repair and so forth. So that's a good one on October 10th. I'd encourage you to attend if you can. That's it for that one. All right, very good. That's okay, no problem. So I just wanted to let you know that, so back to USA North updates. So I wanted to let you know that what this board works on is critically important throughout the state. And so at USA North, I try to share that with our stakeholders in terms of our member utility operators. To refresh your memory, USA North serves the northern 2/3 of California, 49 of the 58 counties. And we have about 1,300 plus utility operators. And so we try to forward all the announcements for surveys that Ms. Branaman and the Underground Safety Board staff forward and so forth. But sometimes we go a little bit farther. And this time we decided to talk about we already heard in the public comments from the person who commented from the California Municipal Utilities Association. We also wanted to talk to our members or allow a forum where they can ask questions from us. Again, we claim no legal authority, but to have it in a setting that's not being streamed live onto YouTube and in as public a setting as this meeting. And so we hosted a meeting at our office in Concord, and we had 47 individuals from 29 different utility operators come, including GIS pros from some large utility operators, to talk about what those GIS proposed regulations mean. So this was awesome. It was great feedback. We did that on August 13th. I did send a letter to the Underground Safety Board. That's only representing my personal recommendations, not necessarily for the entire association. Just like the disclaimer we had at the beginning of this meeting about all the things that we talked about do not necessarily represent the opinion of the state of California or an endorsement and so forth. So anyway, so we did that about GIS. That was excellent. We also had and that was only for utility operators. We wanted to not have other parties involved in that one. We hosted one for potholing as well. As you know, as Jessica mentioned, tomorrow is the deadline for feedback about potholing. So anyone who has that feedback, if you haven't submitted it, I encourage you to do that ASAP. But we did open that to more stakeholders, not just our utility operators, but also excavators and locators and engineers and surveyors and so forth, since it affects all of them. And so we did that on August 20th. We had about 30 people come. I should have taken an exact count on that one, but I neglected to. But we did have good discussion, and there'll be feedback coming from a lot of parties, is what I understand, in relation to that. So I just wanted to share with you that we're trying to help spread the word about the importance of these things. So hopefully that is good news for you. Okay. Specific to USA North, I wanted to mention something that's happening in Nevada. This does not affect California, but I thought you might be interested to know. As I mentioned, USA North serves the northern 2/3 of California. We also cover the entire state of Nevada. A lot fewer utility operators in there, only 206-ish, but they they're better organized in terms of, they have only a few population centers, right? Las Vegas is the behemoth there that gets about 70% of the tickets in the Las Vegas metro area. Reno, Carson City, Elko, and then really it's just minimal activity throughout the rest of the state in terms of ticket volume. But that group talks a lot, similar to CARGA. They have a regional CGA chapter there called the NRCGA, Nevada Regional Common Ground Alliance, and they're very active. And they have 2 procedural issues that I think are worth mentioning to this group. The first one is, so these are 2 new ticket types or follow-up actions that can be taken after an original ticket is created. The first one is called follow-up, and that is meant to handle situations where we don't really have an applicable code for certain things, such as a locator marked some of the job site, but not all of the job site. Say it was a block long and they marked half the block, and they see let's say it's a telecom locator and they see pedestals farther along on the second half of the block that wasn't marked. Well, what should the excavator do in that situation? Today, you could submit a no response, which is an existing type that we have in California, but that doesn't really apply because the operator did respond. But we don't really have hey, you didn't finish a job. Can you come back out and finish a job, or what's happening there? So the follow-up is for that, or also if they have questions about the marks. Sometimes you may recall that the marking guidelines are specified by the Common Ground Alliance Best Practices Appendix B, and that talks about how they not just use the appropriate color, but they also have to indicate ownership of the line, material, size, etc. Sometimes the writing is admittedly, I can't write very well with spray paint, so I get it. And sometimes the markings are not understood by the excavator. And so if they have questions about those marks, or they maybe suspect that something might be missing, this is the tool to facilitate that type of communication. So kudos to Nevada, in my opinion. This is an important secondary action that is available. That went live on August 1st. And so far it's being very well received both by the regulators in Nevada as well as excavators and operators. So that's a good thing. The other one, we mentioned here, or we heard from Ms. Branaman and Jessica about the one of the goals of this board is to focus on compliance related to use of the electronic positive response system, or EPR. Well, one of the complaints we've heard, and I know the board is aware of this as well, and that we've discussed at length in Carga and in other groups, has to do with some excavators feel that the EPR system is being abused by excavators, or excuse me, flip that. Some excavators feel the EPR system is being abused by operators, meaning one of the codes that an operator can submit is negotiate a marking schedule. So let's say the ticket is multiple blocks long and they say it's just not realistic for me to mark that in 48 hours, but I can do the first block and then I'll stay ahead of your crew. And if the excavator says, all right, that sounds good, we're starting on the north end, and they work that out, that would be considered a negotiated marking schedule, and that's good. But sometimes we have excavators see that response on their ticket and they say, we were never contacted by the utility operator or by the contract locator. And so Nevada was seeing that too. And really, this is an issue nationwide. It's not exclusive to California or Nevada or even the Western US. It's all across the board. So Nevada decided to do something about it, and they created a secondary type called dispute. And that allows the excavator to say, I was never contacted about a negotiating marking schedule. And that gets flagged with its own ticket type and also delivered to the regulator so they can choose to investigate that. And the goal is to nip that in the bud, because occasionally it may accidentally be the wrong code was submitted, but it happens so frequently that it led to the point of creating this dispute secondary action. And again, that also went live on August 1st and has been very well received both by regulators and by excavators and even utility operators, because again, most utility operators are also large excavators, either directly or indirectly through their subcontractors, right? And off the record, who has not been happy about this are, well, actually, you know what? We'll just go with everyone's happy with it for now. So far, so good. It's a good start. And those are my updates for USA North. So public comments first before they question for us. Very good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Diamond and Mr. Wingate. At this time, we will open the floor to public comment. If you are in person, you may approach the podium to make a comment. Please provide your name and organization before your comment. If you are on the webinar, please follow the instructions to enter the queue.
Hi, I'm Logan Downer with Excavate 11. I just wanted to touch on what James was talking about in his presentation on negotiated marking schedules and being abused. What I've seen a lot of when I was in my former employer managing 1,500 plus tickets per month is companies are automatically responding right at the legal start date and time on a ticket with code 51. And I'd see that I don't even have a number for how many times it occurred. It happens so frequently. And speaking to different representatives from some of those companies, they say our system's hard coded to make sure that we don't get a no response from you guys. And so they're automatically sending out just blatantly untrue responses. I'm not going to mention any operator names or anything like that, but it does occur and it's happening every single day on a lot of tickets in the state. So thank you.
Are there any webinar comments?
I see no raised hands.
Seeing no further comments, we will proceed. Our next presentation is the Dig Ticket Management in the Eyes of the Contractor from Logan Downer. Logan Downer is the co-founder and general manager of Excavate 11. Logan worked at Preston Pipelines for 12 years prior to founding Excavate 11. At Preston, Logan managed 1,500 dig tickets per month and was the point person for all damage claims and other excavation law-related items. Logan is also active with United Contractors, where he leads courses on dig ticket management.
I guess I could have just waited and come up here. Hi, I'm Logan Downer. I'm with Excavate 11, and I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit today about how we view dig ticket management from industry professionals who've been doing this for decades, right? So that's us. That's what we're going to be going over today. And just brief disclaimer, I know they kind of said it at the beginning of the presentation. I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice, right? This is just what we've done that's worked for us. If you guys have any situations that occur with your company, consult your own attorneys and get advice from them on how to proceed. Okay, so brief agenda real quick of what we're going to be going over. The first thing is who I am and why all this matters, right? The real world cost, what happens when we get things wrong in the field. Then we'll go over some new updates to 4216 and how they affect excavators, right? What was done in SB 778. How to apply the law in the field, setting up certain protections early in your ticket creation process that are going to help you in the event that things change. Managing your tickets, best practices for safety and compliance and efficiency. Analyzing operator responses, how to look at the responses that you're receiving and make sure you're actually clear to dig. And then utility strikes. What do you do in the event of a utility strike? So who we are, that's a very big picture of me. So that's me. You can see me twice now, but so as it already said in the introduction, I've worked at Preston Pipelines for a long time, managed a lot of dig tickets every month, dealt with a lot of damaged utilities, whether it was at fault or not at fault, and the resulting claims that are typically going to come from those. And I led the charge to defend Preston in those claims. In the course of doing all of that, it was clear that we needed an application that could effectively manage all of our dig tickets and the response or the liability that comes along with them. So I went out with some help and we started Excavate 11, and that's where all of this has kind of come together into an application to help contractors. In addition to that, I do teach classes for United Contractors on dig ticket management and 4216 in the eyes of the contractor. So why does this matter, right? That's, I mean, pretty clear why it matters right there. It's every single day that we're working, we have a moral and ethical responsibility to ensure that safety is our #1 priority. Our crews in the field, the general public, everybody's lives are at risk when we're digging around these utilities. Keeping them safe is absolutely the #1 thing every time we go out to work. In addition, it's actually really damaging to your reputation with your customers, right? If you're out there, whether it's marked or unmarked, it's never good when you hit something. You have to go to your general contractor, tell them what happened. We hit this, and even if it's not marked, they're going to think it was your fault, right? So damaging utilities is never good. Your production goes immediately down. I mean, crews can shut down for days at a time over damaging utilities in the field. And real world costs, right? $62 billion were spent on utility strikes in the United States in 2023. $62 billion. So changes to SB 778, SB 78 introduced changes this year to 4216. There's a lot more changes than what I'm going to cover right now, but I'm just specifically hitting on the ones that affect excavators the most in the field. I know that the board has more stuff coming up later in the event to discuss the rest of the changes. The first one is here. It's a change to 4216.3 that what they're saying here is, I can't really see it that well from this angle, but so they removed the terms respond and response when they're speaking about the reference to utility operators' obligations prior to the legal start date and time on a dig ticket, and they replaced it with the utility operator the utility operator must fulfill their obligations under 4216.3A1A. So now that means they can do three things prior to the legal start date and time on the ticket. They have to either go locate and mark, tell you where it is, either, typically with a GPS as-built, or tell you that they have no conflict. That's it. Prior to legal start date and time, one of those three things has to happen. So James mentioned earlier about response codes being abused and things like that. This, to me, is great for contractors because it eliminates the legality of a lot of the gamesmanship that was being played. There's no more use of those codes. That's one of these three things is going to happen prior to the legal start date and time, or you're in violation. The next one here is in 4216.2, which this enables a contractor to start their work prior to the legal start date and time on the ticket if all operators have responded or performed their obligations, rather. Sorry, I'm still getting used to that one. So if all operators on your dig ticket have responded, you can legally start even if you haven't reached the legal start date and time yet. Prior to this, I think there was an understanding among excavators and contractors and call center that we were going to go to work if we got all of our responses, right? We'll get on the phone and try to get those responses now. But in terms of actual legal cover, there was nothing in the law that gave the contractor that ability. Now that's here. That's great for contractors. Next change we want to look at is in 4216.4, which now requires the utility company to state that you may not use vacuum excavation equipment in their response to your dig ticket, right? So prior to this, they had to notify you that they did not accept the use of vacuum excavation equipment, but the law didn't dictate how they were supposed to do it. So there was no standard on how you were going to receive that notification. They've now put that into one spot. So to look at your responses to see if that notification was provided to you. So with this, knowing that that's how they're going to tell you not to use vacuum excavation, we recommend you always, when you're submitting a dig ticket, there's no harm in it. Just say yes to using vacuum excavation equipment. As long as it's applicable to the work that you're going to do, there's a possibility you may call out a vac truck. Just say yes to vacuum excavation equipment. You've properly notified the utility company. And if they have an issue with it, they'll tell you in their response to your ticket. The last one here is 4216.4B, which requires the operator to respond within 1 day to any request that the excavator has for information. So if you're looking for a line, you've potholed within the tolerance zone, you can't find the line, you can call into the call center to request that information from the excavator or from the operator. And there's 1 day for the operator to respond to your request for information. So with that, I strongly recommend to excavators on the call or in the room, do that through the call center. Call 811 to make that request for information as opposed to just calling the utility operator, because you may not be notifying the correct person to make that request to. So to make sure that you accurately start the clock on that notification, go through the call center that puts it on the ticket that you've made a request for information. So applying the law in the field. First thing I wanted to talk about is the definition of a field mark. What does a field mark actually mean, right? So the definition of locate and field mark means to indicate the existence of any owned or maintained subsurface installations by using the guidelines in Appendix B of the Guidelines for Operator Facility Field Delineation, published in the most recent version of the Best Practices Guide of the Common Ground Alliance, and in conformance with the Uniform Color Code of the American Public Works Association. If there is a conflict between the marking practices and the guidelines in this article shall control. So as contractors are very aware, you always need an order of precedence or a controlling document. This is your controlling document. So locate and field mark does not require an indication of depth. That's important throughout the entire process. You're not going to get a depth, right? So looking at here, this here is from the Common Ground Alliance. This is the Guidelines for Operator Facility Field Delineation. Looking at this, we need to know the appropriate color for the facility type, the name of the company, whatever their identifier that they're using, and then total number of subsurface installations and the width of each facility, and then a description of that facility. Total number of subsurface installations is critical. It's also written in the law that they're required to provide that. It's in 4216.3 under the very first option for locate and mark. says that when the information is known, they need to tell you how many subsurface installations exist below. Absent that information, you have no way to know that you've found everything, right? Okay, so improper marks. So if any of you are familiar with the social media trend, what I ordered versus what I got, this is what we ordered, right? We want that joint trench marking telling us there's 4 4-inch plastic lines down there. We know exactly what to look for. We can clearly identify that we found them. But typically what we get is this. We get an empty, just the marking for joint trench, and there's no indication of how many lines are below. So as an excavator, how do you look at that pothole and know that you found everything? Now you have no way of understanding how many utilities you're actually looking for. So when you see this mark without any indication here of what else is there, strongly recommend calling your call center, whether that's Dig Alert or USA North, and asking, you want to notify of improper marks, that the marks do not include the number of subsurface installations. And you can see we've got that written here, where multiple subsurface installations of the same type are known to exist together, mark the number of subsurface installations. It's in the law. So call your call center, tell them the marks don't indicate the number of conduits that are buried. I can only assume that there's one conduit below unless I know how many are there. You can't go on a wild goose chase looking for more and more lines, right? At the same time, do your due diligence, pothole whatever your depth of excavation is going to be, add a foot, make sure that you've taken every precaution to find every utility. Okay, so submitting and managing dig tickets. So setting up for success when you're submitting your dig tickets, the first thing you want to do is account for the possibility of change, right? Sites get pretty fluid. You might run into unmarked utilities that you're going to need to offset around. You may run into buried items that were not indicated on the plans, or the general just comes to you and they want to change something, right? Things happen fast and changes happen constantly. So when you create your tickets, create them with the possibility that things can change on site. We're not going to add any cost or unnecessary work for the utility companies. We just want to make sure that we give ourselves the opportunity to continue work once those changes occur. So this is a look at the USA North ticket creation form here. A lot of you are probably familiar with this. You have to give me a minute. Our system, we create all the tickets in our own system. So I'm not as well versed in this form here, but looking at this, you can see, I'm going to have to turn here. The first question here is asking you how you're performing the work. What method are you using? And so there's a lot of different options that you can give them. Strongly suggest selecting mechanical or multiple methods on that. That leaves you open to using whatever methods it's going to take for you to perform your work without providing information that may become inaccurate later if things change. Same thing with asking about the depth of the excavation here. They give you a lot of different options, or one is unknown. Again, recommend unknown, specifically because that can change. You could end up digging up to a utility and now you have to go deeper and offset something, and now your depth has changed. Your ticket no longer matches the information that you provided to the utility operator. If you leave it as a little bit more ambiguous, it gives you the ability to account for change. And the same with the duration of work on site. I recommend leaving that as unknown. Things can change. You could get change order work. You're going to do it under the same ticket. Don't box yourself into this limited subset of how we're going to do the work. Same here with my excavation will only be within the pavement surfaces. If you say yes to this option, then if you go outside of the pavement surfaces, or if you go through the pavement down into the soil below, you're not really, your ticket no longer matches what you said you were going to do. So leaving it open for change, and that way everybody is notified of everything that could possibly happen on the site. So same with vacuum excavation, as I said earlier, always say yes to that. If there's a possibility at all that you could use vacuum excavation, just say so, because it's not going to create any more work to be done by the utility company, other than they're going to tell you they don't approve of it in the event that they don't want it. Now, when you're using the Dig Alert system, same thing here with the question, will anything other than hand tools be used to expose the member utilities? Always say yes here. You always want to keep that option open that you're going to do more than just hand tools. And in most cases for professional excavation companies, you're going to be using more than hand tools, right? And will the excavation be completely contained within the pavement and not go into the dirt below? I'd still say no to that one, even if all you're going to do is some grinding work. Say no, because the utility companies aren't required to provide the depth anyway. They have to tell you where the utilities are located. Just tell them saying no there gives you it covers you in the event that you were to go through the pavement into the dirt below. So responses, what to look for when you're getting responses from utility companies on your dig tickets. So this one here is a perfect example. You can see on this ticket, we're clear to dig, but if we look in the responses, Kinder Morgan does not agree to allow vacuum excavations around their facilities. So they've notified us there in the response that they are not okay with vacuum excavation used around their truck, around their utilities. So we won't bring a vac truck on site. We'll have to come up with another method to work around those utilities. This next one here, you can see we've called in for remarks and we've got no markings requested being reported by the utility operators. That may be absolutely legitimate. We may have only asked specific operators for remarks on the ticket. It also may not be completely accurate, right? So we want to make sure that we're verifying that we did not ask that. I've also seen this response provided on new tickets, saying no markings requested on a new ticket. That's a very weird response to get typically, right? So always looking at your responses, what are these codes, and then analyzing them to make sure that you're giving your company the best chance to excavate legally and safely. Keep in mind that the call centers, they're not going to give you a no or go, a go or no go based on the responses. That's not their intended purpose. They're there to pass along your intention to excavate to the utility companies and provide you back the information that the utility companies gave. They're the conduit between the excavator and the operator. It's your responsibility once you've received all that information to analyze the information and then responsibly excavate within the statute, right? So there are specific response codes that we use in California, and I believe Dig Alert and USA North have unified now. I think maybe there's one or two codes that exist in Dig Alert that don't exist in USA North, but they're not really of any weight or anything. I think they're mostly internal codes. So looking at these codes, right, the most common ones right here that clear you to dig, clear no conflict, but there might be private utilities on the property. 4216 doesn't require utility operators to mark private utilities. That's the responsibility of the owner of the utility when requested, right? Code 3, existing markings are adequate. I don't see that one as much as I'd like to, but that is an option, right? Code 10, locate area marked. That one you see on most of your tickets. Then you get into 11 and 12 are very similar, right? They either like locate area marked up to a private utility. To me, that really is the same thing as code 10 because in most times they're only going to mark up to private anyway. And then beyond that, if you've hired a private locator, they'll take it from there. So locate area marked, but there's abandoned utilities in the area, and then provided facility information to excavator. Based on 4216.3, right, in that first paragraph, option 2 is to tell you where the utilities are. And typically they're going to do that on like a GPS as-built or something. I see it mostly with sewer districts. They give you a copy of their as-built for the area that you're working in, and you can see where the laterals are. And so that's typically where you're going to get that. There's different variations of codes, but these are the main codes here that clear you to dig. Then looking at codes that don't clear us to dig, right? So code 4, no markings requested. I put that on they don't clear you to dig. It might clear you to dig if it's applicable to the ticket that you submitted. If you didn't ask that company for any marks, then that's going to clear you to dig. But otherwise, it may not. If you asked everybody to come out and mark, when you submitted your remark request and you selected the box to check all and you notified all companies, they now have a legal obligation to respond to your ticket, perform their obligation prior to legal start date. Partially marked, more time needed. That does not clear you to dig. That tells you they started marking it, but you don't have any proof that they've finished it yet. So you need to see that go from code 14 to ideally code 10. Bad address, resend request. The information that you gave them does not match what you marked in the field or what you mapped. No access to locate area, resend ticket or resend request. So typically with this, excavators have a legal obligation to ensure access to the work area for the operator. So if you're working behind a locked gate or you're working on a secured site, as the excavator, you need to arrange for access to the site for the utility operators, for their locators to come out and mark your utilities. So if they're not able to get on, that is a legitimate response. No delineation. If you did not delineate the site, they're going to say so. Area does not match ticket. So if your mapping doesn't match the ticket that you turned in, then they can't accurately mark. It's not going to gather the proper utility companies to come out and mark on your ticket. And so we kind of go through here. I don't want to lull everyone to sleep here with reading out every code, right? But ones to really look out for: high priority line and area. If you have a high priority utility, which in California is 60 kV gas or 60 kV electric, 60 PSI gas, any petroleum line, pressurized sewer, you are required to have a field meet prior to excavation if you're going to be digging within 10 feet of that line. The utility operator is going to reach out and tell you we have to have this field meet. It's their obligation to schedule it with you. It's your obligation to have that meeting before you dig. And kind of going through here, these are the ones like James indicated earlier: negotiate a marking schedule or mutually agreed to a later start date and time. That, again, these would need to change to locate area marked for you to be really allowed to dig under those. So utility strikes and how to handle them. I'm mostly going to focus on utilities that are embedded in pavement. In my experience lately, that's been the most commonly contested damage that we're seeing. There's a lot of confusion about what to do when a utility is in the pavement. So what do you do in the event of a utility strike? The very first priority is confirm that all involved are okay and get everybody to a safe distance away from the utility. If the damage occurred to any high priority utility, you need to call 911. That's your first call. From there, you need to immediately notify the utility operator. Under 4216, you are required to immediately notify the operator, whether it's high priority or not. If it's safe to do so, we recommend take pictures of all the damages, any marks that may be present in the field. Do all of this prior to the arrival of anybody else so you can capture the site as it existed when the damage occurred. Within 48 hours, you need to report the damage to the call center, unless that damage occurred to a natural gas line or a high priority utility or led to an injury or a fatality, in which case you have to tell the call center within 2 hours. That's in the Code of Regulations. So utilities embedded in pavement. If an operator or a local agency knows that it has a subsurface installation embedded or partially embedded in the pavement that is not visible from the surface, the operator or local agency shall contact the excavator before pavement removal to communicate and determine a plan of action to protect that subsurface installation and excavator. And down below in 4216.4, the law allows for the use of power operated equipment for the purpose of pavement removal within the tolerance zone. You are allowed to cut the asphalt to remove the asphalt so that you may pothole. So the notification process, all this is the same. You still need, if you damage a utility in the pavement, you still need to call the operator immediately. You need to call the call center within 42 hours and let them know. But with this, when you're reporting the damage, make sure to indicate on that report that you were not made aware that the utility was embedded in the pavement prior to the damage occurring. If they don't make you aware of that embedded utility, if they do make you aware of the embedded utility, then you need to work with the utility operator, because they have the right to tell you they do not want you to work over that mark or within the tolerance zone of that mark. If you need to pothole it from outside of that, that's going to be a discussion that you have with the utility operator in your field meet. So reporting damages, I'm talking about only reporting your own damages here. I do want to stress, though, that when you discover damages in the field, if you uncover a buried damage, you are required to report that to the call center. Okay. But if you're working with other subs on site, I've had a situation happen before where there was a driller and they drilled through a gas line. The GC knew that our company was very proficient in the dig ticket process and reporting damages and dealing with it. They asked us to call the operator, the utility, call the call center, get everything moving. Had our company stepped into that, we would have been first in line on all the claims and the liabilities and everything that would be coming down. And also, it would have led to the operator that damaged the utility breaking the law by not reporting the damage. So we had to, push back and say, no, we're not the ones that do this. So just knowing in that case who is required to report that damage, make sure you're not walking yourself in front of something that's not actually yours. That being said, if you do discover damage, make sure you report it. But also a common one that happens is you'll have a saw cutter on site and they come out and cut, ahead of time. And then you go back and peel back the hardscape and you find that something was cut through. In that case, require your saw cutter call and immediately report the damage. If they don't, you still have an obligation to report it because you discovered the damage when you peeled up the hardscape. That's pretty much all I have. If you guys want to learn any more about how all this process can be taken care of for you and automated, scan the QR code there and we can talk to you and help you out. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Downer. At this time, we will open the floor to public comment. If you are in person, you may approach the podium to make a comment. Please provide your name and organization before your comment. If you're on the webinar, please follow the instructions to enter the queue. Are there any webinar comments?
There are no comments.
Okay. Well, seeing no further comments, we will proceed. We are running a little bit ahead of schedule, but if the board members are not opposed, we will take a break now where we can share knowledge, exchange ideas, and visit the participating exhibitor tables.
No objection from the board.
Thank you.
We'll have a break here.
Seeing no objections, we will break and we will resume at 3:50. For those who are in person, there are 2 restaurants available on site where you can get refreshments.
So back to you, Ms. President, please.
Thank you, Chair Johns and members of the board. Our next presentation is Damage Prevention. Why is it important? An evolution of best practices from Brian Sneed. Brian is the damage prevention ROW specialist at Kinder Morgan, and his career in pipeline operations has spanned 30 years.
The button's not working. Oh, there it goes. All righty, good afternoon. All righty, evolution of best practices. I'm Brian Sneed. I'll tell you a little bit more about me in a few minutes. We're going to talk about is just button too fast. My apologies. We're going to talk about Kinder Morgan. Talked about representative, which is me, damage prevention, best practices, and we're going to do a quick summary after that. And then open it up for any questions anybody may have. Alrighty, a little bit about Kinder Morgan for those of you who don't already know. That's pretty much our assets across country. We have 83,000 miles of pipelines. We have 141 terminals, and we have 700 billion cubic feet of natural gas storage capacity. There are pipelines and what they transport. Come on. There we go. So we have natural gas, refined petroleum products. We carry crude oil, gasoline for the cars, airplanes, trucks. We do ethanol. We do petrocoke, just to name a few of the products that we handle throughout our entire system. Since we're in California, let's get into California. All righty. In California, we have 3,200 miles of pipelines. We have 19 terminals and pump stations. We operate in 26 of 58 counties. As you can see on there, we have SFPP, CalNev, SFPP North and South. Those primarily handle our liquids products, and then the Mojave and EPNG will handle the natural gas. Very much like the previous slides. Gasoline for pretty much all of California, same with diesel. And we're the primary supplier for jet fuel for 9 airports and 10 military bases, from Miramar down to Travis. And then we also supply natural gas for both PG&E and SoCal Gas. All right, getting back into me. I've been with Kinder Morgan for 30 years. Started off as an operator. I was doing that for 7 years. Realized it wasn't quite my thing, so that's when I transitioned into becoming a line writer, or our damage prevention part of the company. I liked the fact that I was out and about, not sitting behind a computer watching what was going on, and got to interact with different contractors. That was my main reason for taking the position, was it wasn't sitting behind the desk. As I got into doing it and learning more, my passion for damage prevention really kicked in. I started asking more questions, like, we had our policies and procedures, but I wanted to know how the laws applied to what we actually did as well. So, and then after doing that for 17 years, I moved into what I am currently now, a right-of-way specialist or a damage prevention supervisor. My job is now training the line riders and the right-of-way people that are out and about protecting the lines on a daily basis. Basically taking my 17 years of being out on the field and transferring that on to the next generation of people that do what I did. Let's see, what else? That's enough about me. Damage prevention. Best practices. When I was asked to do this presentation, I was kind of thinking and reflecting back on what our best practices are. And I looked back at when I started to where we are now and realized not a lot has changed. We've always had the best practices in place, but they've changed over time. And there's certain catalysts that created the change, very much like Brittny used in her presentation. We had an event here in California in 2004. But Kinder Morgan, as I showed you earlier, is a nationwide country. So it wasn't just California. It was events across the country that led to a lot of the best practices that we already had, and we made them more robust, evolved them basically. As I mentioned, policies and procedures. Excuse me. Policies and procedures are what we utilize when we're doing our damage prevention. We've got 3 main ones that are federally regulated. 195-412, which is expecting right-of-ways. We got 195-440, which is public awareness. And then we've got 195-442, which is required us to be part of the one call system. So our policies and procedures are for the entire nation, but yet what we do is here in California. So sometimes they don't always align. And Kinder Morgan has it written in their policy procedures. We will do what our procedure says or whatever the state requires, whichever is more stringent. And oftentimes being here in California, California is a lot more stringent, but at the same time, our best practices have taken that a step farther. The way I kind of look at our best practices, ever seen the movie Office Space? Oh. Whoa, sorry. Sorry about that. It went faster than I anticipated. Anyway, I was using Office Space as an example. The best practices I kind of look at as flair. You do what you have to do. And in this particular scene, Jennifer Aniston's character, she has the minimum flair. And she's saying, well, have what you asked. But yet, Kinder Morgan, I believe, we're this guy. We've got lots and lots of flair. We push it beyond. We don't just take what we're told to do. We go further. We go above and beyond. Starts with public awareness. This is our public awareness website. We don't have a laser pointer here, but this is our public awareness site here. What just popped up is the, you hear me if I walk away from the microphone, okay? Make sure. We've got our Kinder Morgan, that's the website that everyone's copy that down. If anybody wants it, I can give it to you later. But you basically go to our kindermorgan.com website and you can find this page. And as you can see, it's got stuff for residents and businesses, farmers and ranchers, government and safety officials, schools, or where it says encroachment easements, those are if you're planning a project in and around Kinder Morgan pipelines. You click on that site and you submit your information or your plans to that, and that'll get you going in the right process to incorporate us or include us in your development plans. That way, when you do go to break ground, there are no, what we do now. We've already talked about it, we've already arranged it, we've done it. We're ready to move forward. That way, we're not delaying any contractors and you're not damaging our pipeline. Also, that we got just for excavators and contractors who want more information about Kinder Morgan, you've got all that. And or like it says up there, request additional information. As you can see up the top there, it says translate. We use Google Translate. There we go. And these are just a couple examples of the languages that's available.
Sorry, Brian, can you stay by the mic because we have
Yes, sir.
people on the web who can hear you.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I should have opted for the lapel one. My apologies. Going back to the Google language, I had to look this up. It uses 249 languages. Ironically, I didn't know this, but there's 7,164 known languages, but only 90% of those are used by 100,000 people. So just that little fun fact in there. On top of that, we send out brochures that look like that. We do mass mailings every year. Affected public, we send about 2 million of these out every 2 years. Out here, we use also for the excavators, we send this out. Now this is obviously nationwide. For emergency, for contractors, we send out 1 million of these a year. We also have our interactions when we have field meetings, but we'll get into that in a minute. We do this in English and Spanish, primarily here in California, because a good percentage of our excavator population and our farming population, English is not their first language. This is what we send out to our public officials and safety people. So that's our public awareness. We also participate in events like global excavation safety. I've been to that a couple of times. Why is it fast forwarding? Getting a preview of my presentation. All right, back to a couple of these. Like I said, we excavation safety conference we participate in. As you got a preview on, we also participate in the ag events. Common Ground Alliance Expo. And this is actually when I participated in this year. It was a 3-day seminar, had to do with port security because we have 2 pipelines that go across the San Francisco Bay, 9 miles of pipe. And this is something that you oftentimes don't think about, but it's important because there's dredging going on out there. There's boats out there anchoring. So we wanted to make sure we participated and got the message that we're out there and that we'll work with you and protect our lines, not just from excuse me, because the anchorage is just north of where our pipelines are, and sometimes those ships can get away. A lot of this had to do with an event that happened, was it a couple of years ago, down in the LA Harbor area where a pipeline got lifted off the, yeah, it was. And so because of things like that, why we made sure we participated in something like that, because we didn't want that happening up here. What else? We promote 811 on our website. This is actually from our website. Big proponent of that. Making sure you call before you dig. We let excavators know that. We basically scream it from the rooftop. Everybody, look at anybody ever sees my email says 811 on it because that's important. We also, go above and beyond in that we're a member of Common Ground Alliance. There's 3 tiers or 4 tiers of Common Ground Alliance. We're making sure we're not in the number 1 tier. Not just doing what the basic, we can be in the 4th tier and be accepted, but nope. We want to be in one of the 3 on top. And not just that, on the ground level, our chief operating officer, he is one of the directors. So promoting 811 and damage prevention comes from the top and goes all the way down. Training. We have to train our personnel. That's one of my jobs, as I mentioned earlier. I take the people that were coming in to do the locating and I pass on my 13 years of experience. For our locators, the minimum, we have 16 operator qualifications right now. They range from, see which ones did I put in here? Locating equipment, going out what we utilize to mark the pipelines. Part of that training is that we bump test our pieces of equipment every day before we use them. If it's off within 6 inches in depth, or I realize we don't give out depth, but we have it for our own knowledge purposes. And if it's off within a foot either direction, we send it in for calibration and we will not use it for marking that day. That's not requirement. It's our best practice. If the equipment isn't working, we're not going to put it out there. And so we bump test them every morning before they use them, whether they use it or not. That's the first thing they have to do every day. Let's see, reading alignment sheets. We have to basically take the information about our alignment sheets and pass that along to contractors. Hey, our pipe, it does this, it does that. Oops. Our KMOC system is what we utilize to take in the one-call tickets. I realize there's some vendors here with the ticket programs, but Kinder Morgan has their own internal program, which I'll be showing you here shortly. Not too in-depth, but just a basic damage prevention, because, just not out there marking the lines. You're making sure that you're marking the lines and preventing damage during excavation activities, or if there happens to be a weather event that causes the soil movement. Shoring and trenching, obviously, inspection of pipe and coating. Those are just some of the 16 things that we do training on. All righty, sorry, back and forth. So our one call response, obviously we use USA North and Dig Alert here in California. Now, I'm gonna go back in history a little bit. When I first started 30 years ago, I had a laptop, a Thomas guide, and that's how I found the lines. This little red, you can't see it real well, but there's a little red line where the pipeline runs on there. And we basically, the tickets used to come in via teletype with a little dot matrix printer. About the time I started on a regular basis in 2002 is when we transitioned to receiving emails on that laptop with an air card. Now, air cards weren't as reliable then, but that's how we did it. And still had to use the the Thomas Guide, because they would have the Thomas Guide coordinates on there, and technology or best practices have moved with technology. And thank goodness for that. Because, you know, first part of my day used to spend 2 hours going through the tickets and the Thomas Guide, sending responses to whatever contractor called. I'd have to either call them, fax them, or email them a clearance in some way, shape, or form. Now we have our system that does it all for me. Thank goodness. This is our system. Basically, it shows everything, because like I said, we're national. The default map shows up to just that. And then that's our inbox. That's what it looks like. When one of our right-of-way persons clicks on it, they click on it. It'll highlight in yellow, and a little red box is where it'll automatically take you to where they're working. I'm not trying to sell you the program, just showing you what it does. Taking information on the left, and then all the other information on in the middle there. It shows you the city, that shows you contact phone number, who to contact. We should have cleared some of that, so that people didn't agree to let me put the information up there. So I do apologize for that. This obviously is a no conflict ticket in our regards. No conflict for Kinder Morgan is anything outside of 50 feet. Kinder Morgan uses the API standard for an encroachment is anything within 50 feet of our utility. You know, we have obviously authorized and unauthorized encroachments. So you call on a one call ticket, that doesn't necessarily mean you're unauthorized. That just means you're making us aware that you intend to dig in there. Authorized encroachment is, hey, we've talked to you and we're going to move forward. Generally, that comes on this type of ticket. This is when we move it from marked to monitor status. And then as you can see in the red box there, it puts you basically on the line. And then what we'll do is we'll go out and mark the ticket. We'll mark it within 48 hours. That's the requirement. But our policy is a little bit more stringent than California, because here in California, the day you make that call doesn't count part of the notification process. But for Kinder Morgan, it does. Doesn't matter when that ticket comes in, we have 48 hours to mark it. Now, weather permitting, of course. Obviously, if it's pouring rain and we have a line down the middle of the street with it's in asphalt, the paint's not going to stick very well. But we will communicate that to the contractor, said, hey, we need to have a little delay in marking because, as you can see, it's raining outside. I realize it does rain. People say it doesn't rain in California, but it does. But, you know, that would be an exception. Or after a rain, say the pipeline's under 2 or 3 feet of water, that takes a little bit more time to get out and mark there. We can do it, and I have done it. I've put on some hip waders and stuck flags in a puddle. But that's Kinder Morgan's policy. 48 hours, doesn't matter. Here's some pictures of just back when I was a locator. Kinder Morgan, we take pictures of all our locates. I think, can't say we're the 100% the first one to do it, but I started, as you can see from that picture, that was in 2005. That's when we were one of the first utilities in California to start doing it. Pretty sure that goes along with the CGA requirements. Got 2 lines marked, had the 1 ticket never, but we've evolved with technology. You know, as I got more and more at it, 5 years later, there's same markings, but as you notice, I'm putting more information on the whiteboard. My best practice of putting information evolved, like better to describe where the work was happening. You know, I've got our engineering station on there. I got a description of where we're at. Right before I stopped line writing, we started including GPS coordinates on our documentation. You know, which way is north, ticket numbers, line sections, who the contractor was, where it was. That's just pictures of the markings for that same whiteboard. So those were just examples of what I used to do. We'll get into the evolution and where best practices are now. We send our line riders out to do the marking of the pipeline when they see the ticket. As you can see, he's got his locator in his hand. It's obviously in a road, so we've got some people out there for some safety purposes, in case there's vehicle traffic. So this is what we utilize now. This is Solocator. It's a program that we utilize that shows that has the compass bearing at the top, automatically gives you the GPS coordinates, and then we can include the USA ticket number on there and where we're at. So that's what we utilize now for, instead of taking pictures. I don't have to write on a whiteboard, or nobody has to write on the whiteboard. We can just type it in and then you can take pictures. Another example. There we go. Oop. That's driving me nuts. All right, there we were, sorry. Another one, you can actually see our line markers in those. So after we got marked, we have field meetings. Kinder Morgan, even if it's within, not within 10 feet, we want to meet. If we mark it, we meet. We get into the 10-foot thing here, that's because the 10 foot is here in California, where high priority utilities. I can't speak to other states, but we take what Kinder Morgan promotes, and if we mark, we meet. Doesn't matter how close it is. I realize California 4216C says proposed. So there's, you know, my interpretation, we may be outside the delineated marks and you may be working 50 feet in from those delineated marks, but because we're proposed within 10 feet of those delineated marks, I'm making sure my people go out and meet with the contractor just to verify where you're working is where you say you're working. Part of that field meeting, we have what's called our excavation site inspection form. On this form, we have this filled out for everything, and we put on the ticket number, we put on the date, we have yes and no boxes, you know, when the marks are due by, when we place them. We also have our contact information that we're going to give to the contractor, because once they start work, we want to make sure they're in communication with us with the whole time. Even if they're not working within 10 feet, we want to know that, hey, you can get a hold of us for any reason. And we'll actually put that in the comment section there. In the comment section, you can see there's 4 things, you know, scope of work, what the agreement was with the contractor, what type of material and equipment's on site. Those are all things that we want to know. And then we'll also put special instructions in there. And though it's not on here, what I promote to my guys, that we have control centers that are open 24/7, that we want to put that number in that special instructions as well. That way, I don't ever want to hear a contractor say, I can't get a hold of Kinder Morgan. All our signs have our phone numbers on it, but I'm going to give you this piece of paper right here that says, we met you on this date and time. We talked about this. This is what you're doing. If you're going to change whatever you're doing in any way, shape, or form, give us a call. We'll come back out. We're here to protect our line. Every single one of the guys I work with, it's not Kinder Morgan's line. They all say, it's my line. If you're working around my line, you're calling me. And if you can't get a hold of me, you're calling our control center. We may not necessarily get somebody right there immediately, but we'll get somebody there. On here, you also have the distance, 10 feet, and tolerance zone. I know here in California, recently, the tolerance zone, you're allowed to use mechanical equipment within that for potholing purposes. Kinder Morgan does not allow that. We will be on site. Anytime you're excavating within 10 feet, we will be on site no matter what you're doing. Potholing, most definitely, because we have to report the findings. Plus, we have to make sure there's no damage to our pipeline. And we don't just hold contractors to that standard. We own our own people to that standard. For second party work and even first party work, if they want to use mechanical equipment within our tolerance zone, they have to get a variance from our directors, not just one, but 2 directors. It can be done, but it's going to take some time. So, like I said, it's not a standard we're holding, oh, you contractors, you can't do it, but we can, haha. Nope. We have the same standard for ourselves. No mechanical equipment within our tolerance zone unless it's approved by 2 directors. And we have to walk them through reasons why. The ground's too hard, because that does happen here in California. There are areas where somehow they got the pipes in and you've got some not easy digging. We definitely don't want to delay the work. See on the back here, we'll represent, this is actually blank because the tolerance zone in California is 1, but this is a nationwide form. The tolerance zones aren't the same no matter where you go. And that's why the blanks are there, but we would fill that in. Our tolerance zone is 24 inches. And digging only in the 24 inches. Let's see. I'm afraid to push the button too hard because it jumps fast ahead too soon. There we go. All right, other thing we do, regular patrolling. Patrolling, do by vehicle, obviously, company vehicles. We have blind pilots that fly once a week. And we do it on the ground. Now, the minimum requirement for patrolling is we have to do it at least 26 times a year, but not to exceed every 3 weeks. Our line pilots, they fly once a week, weather permitting, obviously. Our patrollers, depending on the areas, we patrol more often. And this is why we patrol. See, remember this one? I actually helped discover this one. I was doing an assessment of one of our new employees and happened to be driving by an area of his cover, and we looked and like, do you have a one-call ticket for that? And he's all, I do not. So we pulled over. They were replacing a corrugated storm drain here. I think they were what, 5, 6 feet deep, about 3 feet across. No one-call ticket. But we had a pipeline marker right there. Pipeline marker, wish I had a better picture, but the local phone number is on there. But yeah, they missed us by, I think they were 22 inches away from us when they did that. But this is why we do regular patrols. There's another one. This actually, the pilot, this happened between 2 flight patrols. Contractor put in this beautiful fence. You can kind of see it there in the corner there. That's how close they got to our pipe. They thought they were safe because of that pole, that fence line there. Once again, line marker right next to. They saw it. They didn't hit it. They didn't take it down, but didn't call us. Here's some examples of what our line pilot sees. Our line pilot also uses soul locator. I don't know if you can see it from there, but up there in the right kind of slap dab in the middle. Kind of see the hole. And this is what they found. Now, the delineated marks, those aren't from the person digging. Those were our delineation marks because we had to investigate to make sure that they didn't hit the line. But that gentleman you see sitting there in the dirt, he used that shovel and he dug on the UP right away because he was about to be incarcerated and he was trying to hide all this stuff. And in our investigation and talking to him, well, he thinks he saw our pipeline. So that's why we had to delineate and do a further investigation to make sure he didn't get into our line. Now, granted, he was just using hand tools, but shovels can cause damage to our coating and it may not affect the pipe currently, but over time, with that leak or that break in the cathodic protection, that will eventually lead to a corrosion and then potentially a leak. There's another example of line pilot caught. This is out in an agriculture area. You can kind of see the trench there. And that's what we found. They were working at that irrigation system. They were going to put in that big PVC to water the fields. Wish I had a better picture, but we did have line markers there as well. Just they thought they were good to go. And last one that I don't have a picture from the line pilot, but this line pilot did find this one as well. The reason why I don't have a picture is because he couldn't take one. This was close to an airport. And because he had to pay attention to other air traffic, he reported it to us. We went out and found it. As you can see, we got a line marker in the bushes over there. Contractor in this particular case was also the property owner. They felt that this didn't qualify as excavation because all they did was break out the asphalt and they were fixing fixing their driveway. So, but, by the time we'd got there, they'd already saw cutted. They put in new rebar, the whole 9 yards. Very much like KMOC, we have this system. It's our flight tracker system. This is where we keep track of all this. It operates very similar to our KMOX system. In this particular one, I have a different mapping. We can change the mapping, the way it looks in our programs. So that's what it looks like when it's populated. I don't know if you can see that there, but when I was preparing this presentation, as I mentioned, we have to do it 26 times a year. I don't know if you can see the number up there. I was at 549 when I did that presentation. That's how many extra patrols we've done so far this year, just in Northern California. So going above and beyond, what's doing more than what's expected. That's our best practice. And that, like as I showed you earlier, that doesn't just at the local level, that comes from the top all the way down. We go above and beyond. So basically, let's kind of summarize best practices. A lot of flair. That's kind of what we go for. We go for a lot of flair. We want to be not the minimum. When I do more, we go above and beyond. Because we definitely don't think that doing the minimum is enough. We want to be the guy that goes above and beyond. We want to be the leaders, not just amongst our own company, but the industry as a whole when it comes to protecting the pipelines and underground utilities. That's it, above and beyond. For public awareness, as I mentioned, we've got an informative website. We do regular mass mailings to all the stakeholders. We attend events very much like this one here. Thank you guys for the opportunity to be here. Education, we do that every day when we're out with, just not with the contractors, our right-of-way people when they're out and about. We get questions all the time. What are you guys out here doing? Why are you here? And we explain. We got a pipeline here. We're making sure it's marked in case there's that construction activity. I like educating because a lot of people, what gets most people to kind of pay attention is when you say jet fuel, which I find kind of amusing, because they don't realize gas is more flammable than jet fuel. But when you say jet fuel, people listen up. Gasoline, because they put it in their car, they don't think about it as a negative thing for some reason. But gasoline is way worse than jet fuel because it's with a flash point on that is minus 46 degrees. Flash point for jet is 105. A big difference when you get that out in the open. And as I said, with public awareness, we go above and beyond. We try to get to talk to everybody who will listen. One call response. We mark within 48 hours, weather permitting. Like I said, California government code requires us to, the day notified doesn't count. We don't care. We're out there within 48 hours. Pictures of the markings. Make sure we take pictures of it. Not a requirement. That's one thing I forgot to mention. We treat each ticket like a brand new ticket. Doesn't matter what version, we treat each one as a new ticket. We go out, we mark it every single time. Sometimes that bites us in the bottom, but we don't care. We mark, the contractor doesn't have to request a remark from Kinder Morgan. Kinder Morgan, every time they go out, they're touching up the paint, they're freshening up the marks, making sure that you guys, hey, that Kinder Morgan's there. And we will explain that during the field meeting. Contact the excavator. As I mentioned before, every single ticket we mark, we call. For the non-conflicts, we let the system do its thing and then do a electronic response that way. But as far as anything that we mark, we're calling the contractor. Say, hey, we're here. When are we meeting? When are you starting? Conduct field meetings, provide copy of the contractors for copy for the contractor's record. That form I showed you, we keep a copy for our records. We give a copy to the contractor as well. Regular site visits. We visit our sites once we mark them. We don't just mark it and okay, we're good. We go by on a regular basis, part of our patrolling. We're out there making sure that our marks, once again, are still good and the contractor does what they said they're doing. That doesn't always happen. And as I mentioned, we observe everything within 10 feet. I can't speak for other utilities, but it's been a while since I've seen another utility, but we're there for potholing. We're there, they may be trenching 20 feet away, but if they're paralleling us, we've got somebody there. We don't want any questions. No reason. Well, how did that happen? And then document in our one call system. Come on. And like I said, routine patrols with vehicles, with planes, and with boots on the ground. One slide, like I said, when I presented this, put up this presentation together, we were what, 549 patrols. Actually, I checked yesterday, and for California, we've already done 1,250 extra patrols in all of California. So that's Kinder Morgan's best practice, because I'm not just, and as I said, more than the minimum of 26 times per year. That's the minimum requirement, 26 times per year. That's what the federal law says. But nope, like I said, we're at 1,200 this year already, and we're not even through the year. All righty. That pretty much sums it up. I apologize, I wasn't watching a timer, so I don't know if I went over, if I went under. Any questions?
Brian, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Has Kinder Morgan started utilizing fiber optic, not only for leak detection, but for ground disturbance?
Sorry, okay.
Want me to go hard? Have you started using fiber optic cable along your more sensitive lines or your highly volatile, large diameter lines for leak detection or ground disturbance?
Yeah. It's basically like a LiDAR type of thing. Okay, we're actually using flight scan is a new technology that we're utilizing that can be done from the planes, and it can actually look for leaks and things of that nature along the ground. So we've been utilizing that for the past, I think, 6 months now.
I know that some agencies and utilities are using fiber optic for leak detection and ground disturbance. They can even tell when a shovel is put in the ground next to their facilities. And I don't think I realize it because I've tied into your gas lines. We're minimum 600 PSI for natural gas, correct?
For the natural gas, I'm not 100% sure, but on our liquid pipelines, average about 600 PSI. Most of them leave our facilities around 12 to 1300 PSI.
Aviation fuel, I've been around airports, and how much is that? So everybody knows. I mean, I've been around 3,200 PSI.
And actually, same for aviation fuel.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's aviation fuel. So are you talking about aviation gas, which is different than jet fuel?
Jet fuel, I'm sorry.
So jet fuel is basically just clean diesel. And that goes in the same lines. The products are all put in the same lines. So we have gas, diesel, and jet fuel, multi-products. It goes along. Because of the large volumes and the high pressures, there's not a whole lot of commingling, and we just cut it out, and it gets re-refined later.
Okay.
So,
all right, thank you.
But the pressures are the same for all products.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sneed.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
It is. Questions are open.
Yeah.
Perfect. So one of the biggest damages facing California is excavations without an 811 ticket. And so in looking at how to tackle this problem, we looked at our notifications. And I don't think anybody would be surprised to learn that excavators that are digging without a ticket when they damage a line, they don't report themselves to the board. So when we were trying to tackle this problem, we routinely found that Kinder Morgan is a leader in notifying the Underground Safety Board of when someone is excavating around their lines without a ticket, regardless if there's a damage or not. And so I was wondering if you could just talk about your process and how you motivated your team to start reporting that information to the Underground Safety Board.
Okay, that's done through our routine patrols. Like I said, our patrols are out there, they're watching ongoing projects and looking for things that they're not aware of. As far as the reporting process, that's actually one of my responsibilities, and the other gentlemen that are, do what I do. And for California, there are 5 of us, 2 of us in Northern California and 3 down in Southern California. We take the information from the line riders and right-of-way inspectors when they've discovered an unauthorized excavation, and we put it together and we submit it to the board on their behalf.
Well, thank you very much. I wasn't aware that there was only 5 of you. In speaking with other operators about this and asking why they don't report to us, I was told, well, your regulation only requires the excavator too, which is something that surprised me. So we are going to be creating an awareness campaign to let other operators know that if they find themselves in a damage because of a no 811 ticket, we do have a complaint process that they can utilize to report that information so we can look into it. But I just personally want to thank you and all of the others on your team that report to us, because since the board has been doing these investigations, you guys have been a leader in reporting that information. It's incredibly helpful. So thank you very much.
As I mentioned, we look at anything within 50 foot as an encroachment. So whether it's authorized or unauthorized, and that's our metrics, is anything that happens within 50 feet, we want to know about it. So as long as you call 811, we'll work with you to get your work done. We're not here to stop anybody. We want to work with you. We just want to make sure it gets done safely, because some of the pictures I had up there before, when you hit one of our lines, it's not a good thing. I mean, for the environment or for yourself. When the product potentially comes out of that line at 600 to 700 PSI, it will self-ignite.
Are there any additional questions in person? You can approach the podium or turn your microphones on. Are there any webinar questions?
There are no public comments.
All right, well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further comments, we will proceed. So thank you again to all of today's attendees, speakers, and exhibitors. Chair Johns, I will now return the floor to you for closing remarks.
Fellow board members, any comments or anything you'd like to bring up? That being said, it was very good presentations today, and really appreciate what people have done, and my thanks to everybody, and we will adjourn till tomorrow. 8 o'clock is, well, you can see the agenda. But yeah, I think we'll have, oh, there we go. The 8 o'clock registration and exhibitor tables, and then 9 o'clock we'll have presentations going. So we will hope to see you then, and thank you all, and have a good evening.